Welcome to this live sharing of my experience at Dr. Joe Dispenza's Cancun retreat in June 2022. So first off, I just want to mention that I am currently located in the town of Tulum, which is about 2 hours from Cancun. My husband, Dave, and my son, R11, and I we figured if we're coming to Mexico, we might as well extend our stay and really just enjoy ourselves. And I don't have a normal home office here, so I'm in my living room, and you might hear the normal sounds of life of Dave and R11 doing their thing, having breakfast. It's in the morning right now, and getting ready to go places. And so that's just a part of this recording, and I appreciate your understanding that. So I want to share some of the things that I learned from Dr. Joe at this event. And I want to preclude by saying that the vast majority of the actual content that he teaches at the event is really a repetition of what I had already learned from him in his books and in his online courses. So I happen to find his books to be really great. Some of them resonate with me more than others. It seems like he approaches different books from different perspectives, touching different kinds of people. So I started reading something like Change Your Mind, Change Your Life, or something like that. I can't remember what it's called. But that book didn't resonate for me as much, even though I'm super passionate about science. For some reason, it felt so science loaded that it didn't speak to me as much. I'm currently reading You Are the Placebo, which is super story loaded. It's going from one placebo experience to the next, different studies, but it does a really good job of telling the stories behind those studies and how those studies worked and what the outcome was of people taking fake sugar pills or fake surgeries and having totally amazing positive results, and him asking the basic question, what is it that allows such a thing to happen? And his trying to answer that question is really what all of his work is about. How is it that simply through the power of thought, simply through belief, we can absolutely change our lives, not just our physical and mental health, but also the situations and the circumstances around us. And the book that really sort of just blew me away, there were so many times I was like, oh my gosh, Dave, I just learned the coolest thing, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. It was literally mind-blowing, is his latest book. It's called Becoming Supernatural. And Becoming Supernatural really covers all of the content that he teaches at his advanced retreat. So I highly recommend you read that book, because not everyone's going to get to a retreat and not everyone's necessarily interested in it. But if you're interested in experiencing more health and more vitality and more joy and a higher consciousness in your life, that book is really, really great. He interweaves story with science and helps you understand how the science of your brain, how the science of quantum physics, how the science of epigenetics, which is how the environment actually shapes how genes behave and upregulates and downregulates different genes to create different physiological outcomes. He interweaves all of this stuff together really with explaining what our mystical traditions have been teaching us for thousands of years. So it's really, really cool stuff. And explain to you why and how meditation works. So I want to share with you a little bit of what I've learned from him before I delve into some creepy, crazy, trippy, amazing mystical experiences that I had at this retreat. So if you're not able to go through this entire talk, I'll give you the nutshell. First of all, I find the science absolutely fascinating. Some people, it helps them to use science as a portal to access spiritual concepts. Dave doesn't really need the science so much. It doesn't really speak to him. He's perfectly happy just accessing the spiritual through spiritual avenues. But for me, I'm more cynical and doubting, and there's something about science that really helps me believe and understand and resonate with things. And it helps me get over that part of me that's like, nah, prayer doesn't work. Nah, it doesn't really matter what we think. Nah, all of this stuff. So if you geek out on science, I highly recommend you check out Joe Dispenza. The other thing that I'll say is, do I recommend a person attend one of these events? 100% yes. I'll give a caveat, which is that I noticed, and this isn't always true, but the people who take his online course well in advance, practice meditation daily, read his books, take notes, and are watching testimonials online had a much, much more profound experience than the people who came in cold. And that alone is one of the differences between Dave and myself. For months before the event, I was meditating on a daily basis. I was watching tons of testimonials of people who had had pretty miraculous experiences from doing this meditative work on a daily basis and from attending these events, and just reading the books and really delving into the concepts. So Dave took the course but didn't do the meditations as much, and he was like, you know what, I'm just going to wait till I get to the event. And I think that it really had a profound effect on both of our experiences, and I noticed that to be true for other people as well. So if you're going to spend tons of money to go to this kind of event, I highly recommend you invest as much time as you can before the event into already applying the principles. Why? Because this event demanded a huge amount of focus and attention and hours of meditation. And if you're not used to meditating, it's kind of a lot to throw yourself into. The other thing is that there are people who attend this event over and over again, not because of the educational content. They kind of already got that. They attend the event because even though they have a daily meditative practice, there's a really big difference between meditating on your own and plugging into 1,500 people all engaging in higher consciousness work at the same time. And I'm sure if you've ever been to a concert or if you've ever prayed in a community, you know that there's a difference between doing things on your own and doing things as a collective. You create higher vibrations, and those vibrations are contagious, right? You're an energetic being. You're constantly putting energy out. So you're affected by all of the energy of the people around you, and it makes a really big difference. So for me, if I ever attend one of these events again, it's going to be because of the collective meditative experience pushing me up to a higher level. And so if I'm already working on myself, then I can just plug into that collective and fly. Mind you, anybody can plug into the collective and take a step up, but it really helps if you're prepared to sit for hours on it. Okay, great. So now that I've said that, I want to take a look at my notes and just share a little bit of the thoughts and the science before I share all my crazy trippy stuff. Okay. So first off, in case you don't know, Dr. Joe Dispenza is a physician and a scientist. He's a doctor of chiropractic and had a pretty tripped out experience early in his life that absolutely revolutionized the rest of his life. So he was running in a race, I believe. Yeah, he was doing like a triathlon or something like that. And he got hit by a motorcycle and went flying in the air and landed in really ugly ways and totally trashed his spine. So he broke a whole bunch of his vertebrae and messed things up and went to see lots of different surgeons, all of whom said the exact same thing. He was going to need to have some sort of rod put into his spine. Now, he himself as a chiropractor knows enough about human physiology and how the spine works that had one of his patients come to him with that exact situation, he would have said to them, yes, for sure, get that surgery. But he'd also been delving into mind-body medicine and knew enough to say, wait a second, I know that I can have an effect on my body through my mind alone. And here I am, stuck, horizontal in a hospital bed. Maybe I can use thought to change my body and heal myself, which is a pretty precarious thing for him to have done, because apparently the surgery is kind of timely. Pushing it off is not a great idea, but he decided to do it anyway. And kid you not, within a matter of weeks of just focusing on rebuilding his spine and picturing his spine rebuilt, and then eventually doing a little bit of physical therapy, he literally totally healed his body. I saw this man jump, stand, run, dance, enjoy, cheer, sit, move, engage, hug, you name it. I saw this guy moving like crazy on stage because he's totally healed. This was decades ago. And he absolutely healed his body simply through the power of his mind and understanding how we can do that. And eventually that led him to dive into neuroscience. He went into getting a higher degree in neuroscience and really wanted to understand the placebo effect in particular, and also all sorts of mystical traditions and experiences, because they're the ones who know so much about how the mind affects the body. And he's put all of this body of knowledge together into his understanding of the world. And that came up in a film called What the Bleep Do We Know? If you have never seen it, you can access it online. There's another film called Heal that he's featured in. And all of these have to do with mind, body, and energy medicine. And eventually people started coming to him and saying, okay, like, I get that you did that, but how do I do that? And he started teaching workshops and writing books, explaining to people how to do this stuff. And people kept demanding more. And eventually he created more and more advanced workshops. And what happened over time is so many other just regular people like you and me started having really amazing healing experiences. People who were in wheelchairs being able to walk, blind people being able to see, cancer patients who were told they had months to live, totally healing their cancer and having spontaneous remissions. So how on earth did people do this? And boy, is it tempting to get me to want to do this, because as many of you know, I've struggled with migraines for 17 years, and it's something I really don't want to experience anymore. And I've tried absolutely every single medical avenue, and nothing has helped. So engaging in this, in addition to me just wanting to experience more peace and joy in my life, I also want some health outcomes. So it's part of what drew me to Joe Dispenza's work. Okay, so I want to share that the core body of knowledge that Joe Dispenza teaches is where all of these different types of science meet. So one is the science of epigenetics, which I've mentioned before, which is how our environment shapes the way our genes behave. And environment is a pretty broad term. So that means the physical environment that we're in, which can include the foods we eat and chemicals and the people we're around and all of that. But more importantly, the environment in the cell itself. So how are you holding energetically? If you're stressed, certain genes get upregulated and other genes are downregulated. So that means like they're turned on or turned off. So a gene for cancer can be turned on or turned off depending on your emotional state, your energetic state, your lifestyle, your behavior, everything. And that's actually significantly more effective at creating health outcomes than your genes themselves. Your genes are not the blueprint for your life. Your epigenetics is the blueprint of your life. And this is a science that's been coming out for the past few decades, and most people just don't know it, which means that through your consciousness, you can actually deeply affect your genes. And you can go to Dr. Joe's website where you can see some studies that are being done on the actual genetic markers in participants at his events, and how those genetic markers, they can test them in the blood. They're actually shifting because of the meditative work that people are doing. The other area of science that he touches into is quantum physics. So Newtonian physics is what we interact with on a daily basis, right? So if I have an object and I push it, it's going to move, right? We know that there's gravity. We understand that that if something's in motion, it'll stay in motion, right? Unless some force blocks it. And there's all sorts of different principles that we interact with on a daily basis in Newtonian physics. But if you actually go inside of atoms in the deepest level, there's a whole other type of physics, totally different laws that govern what happens. And the quantum is actually what defines how the world functions, not Newtonian physics. And another thing that's crazy is if you go inside of an atom, over 99% of the atom is simply empty space. Over 99% of you is empty space. You think you are so much matter and it feels so real, but mostly we're just empty. And in all of that emptiness, we can fill it with energy and consciousness and create shifts. It's a little difficult for us to understand, but the more you try to delve into it, the more trippy it is. It's pretty cool. Okay, So one of the things that Dispenza really focuses on is the different type of emotional states that human beings get into. So we have what he calls survival emotions. Most of us tend to talk about those emotions as being negative emotions like anger and fear and worry and sadness and frustration. The thing about calling them survival emotions that I've become absolutely in love with is that there's a place for those emotions. If you're on hiking through a forest and suddenly you see a bear, fear is actually a really helpful emotion in that point in time because it gets your body doing everything it needs to do in order to protect yourself from the danger. The challenge is that most of us live in fear and worry all the time, even when we're not at all in danger. And that's when things get wonky, right? So for survival, it's good. But you can always ask yourself at any given point in time, am I really needing to be in survival mode? Am I actually in danger right now? And if I'm not in danger right now, is there a different mode I can be running? So there's survive mode, and there's what I like to call thrive mode. So thrive mode is all of the what we tend to call positive emotions like joy and lightness and gratitude and appreciation. And you can even hear the way I talk about those emotions that I'm talking about them more from the top half of my body. So the bottom of our bodies tend to focus on survival, and the top of our bodies tend to talk about these more elevated emotions, which is why when people go into survival mode, their bodies tend to collapse, right? And all of them tends to focus and center on this part of the body. When we're in those upper emotions, our bodies lift up, and your eye will even focus more on this part of a person. It's like on how light they are. We use this language all the time. That person's so heavy. They're such a drag, right? It's like they've sunk into themselves in such a deep way. And the reason that is because when we're on survival mode, all of our focus goes on the material world. It doesn't really matter how spiritual we are, or how lovely things are, or how holy life is, or the unity of all things when we're with the bear, right? When we're in the presence of the bear, we need to be hyper focused on the material world. And that's really necessary and important. How do I get through the cliffs in such a way that the bear doesn't get me? Or how do I climb this tree? Or how do I attack this bear? Everything needs to be hyper focused on the material. It's a very heavy state of being. It's not a great time to be light. But when I'm living my regular life and I'm in that really heavy place, I become such a drag. And we have these other people, we even talk about them as being light and bright and airy, and they inspire us. What does it mean, inspire? Inspire literally means to breathe in. It's like there are people who just make us breathe in. They lift us up, right? Think about the language that we use. And that's because they're living on thrive mode. It's a more spiritual, more energetic way of living. And there's a really big difference between living in a very material way and living in a very spiritual way. And I don't want to confuse this with materialistic, right? It's not what I'm talking about. Because you could theoretically be spiritual, but super attached to, like your body and making sure you're safe all the time. The material way is very focused on what do I have, and do I have enough, and what can I hold on to, and making sure all the time that I'm safe. That's why I want to accumulate people, and I want to accumulate ideas that are going to keep me safe, and I want to accumulate stuff that's going to keep me safe, and I want to have a house that's going to keep me safe, and I want to have a community that's going to keep me safe. And everything is about being as safe as possible because I want to survive. And so I accumulate even more and more material around me. But if I experience myself as already being safe, so I don't need all of that material stuff. That doesn't mean I might not enjoy the material stuff, but there's a really big difference between wanting a house because I need a house to feel safe and to feel like enough and to protect me, and wanting a house because isn't it so fun to play house? Do you remember when you were a kid and you played house, right? Little boys and little girls, they all play house, right? And they pretend to be the mommy and the daddy and the baby and the this and the that, or they play some job or they do something. They don't say, oh, let's play astronaut in a space station, because if I'm not an astronaut, no one's going to love me. Or if I'm not an astronaut, I'm not going to be enough. Or if I'm not an astronaut, I'm not going to be safe. No, we say, I'm going to be an astronaut in a space station because wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't it be fun? Isn't life interesting? Isn't it cool to expand myself and experience more? Two different states of being. You could have the same house and the same people and the same stuff, but one of them is about trying to protect yourself, and the other is about experiencing expansiveness and generosity and growth and connection and beauty and love and play and color. They're two very different states of being, even though on the outside the lives could look exactly the same. So it's not about being materialistic, it's about how you relate to the material world. Okay, so one of the things that happens when we're in this survival mode is we get very, very focused on everything outside of us. Because we want to make sure we're safe, we're not really checking in with ourselves. We're very much focused on other people, what they think, how they behave, how's the animal, how's this, how's that. What is my relationship to my environment, because I need to be safe and I need to survive. When we're in this thrive mode, we're already safe, so I don't need to focus on all of that stuff around me. I can really turn in. That's when I'm safe enough to close my eyes. One of the things I see with a lot of my clients is I ask my clients all the time to close their eyes, and my students as well in workshops. And very often people don't want to close their eyes. It feels scary to them. Like, just doing that means like, well, then I can't look at what's around me. And if I can't look at what's around me, how can I make sure that I'm safe? How can I make sure that dangers aren't going to pop up? Or how can I make sure that everything's exactly where I need it to be? But if you're already in a safe place, you can close your eyes and really turn in. And it's in that turning in that experience of safety, that the body can finally wind down. And your brain waves can start to slow down. And the body can go back into thrive mode, which means it's no longer producing the hormones that are really great to protect you from the bear, like cortisol and adrenaline. And it starts producing the hormones and the chemicals that help you to heal, to repair, to live, to thrive, to digest your food, to protect yourself from outside things, to run your immune system. Because when you're constantly on survival mode, these hormones are actually inflammatory to the body. So you get all sorts of inflammatory diseases. So many diseases and so much conflict is simply caused by stress. I'm sure you've experienced that within your own body. So when you're able to turn in and go into a safer mode, then that's when you can start experiencing more healing in the body. One of the things Joe Dispenza calls this is coherence. So he keeps in his YouTube interviews, I saw a bunch of YouTube interviews, and he kept talking about this term coherence. And I have to say, like, coherence is not a word we use very much, and I'd never used it in terms of heart and brain coherence. I had no idea what he was talking about until I went to the event. And for the first time, I understood what coherence was. So if you put a heart on a monitor, you can see, right, what the heart's doing, do, 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 do. And when a person is under stress, the heart's waves are like really erratic, right? And it's not pretty, it's ugly. And if you put it up to a, what's it called, a stethoscope, so the way you can actually see with the stethoscope, look this up because it's really, really cool to see. You can find videos of this on YouTube. You can sort of see the waves that the heart is producing, and they look like these beautiful, sometimes beautiful. You can see the patterns as they present themselves on a stethoscope. And when a person is stressed out, right, their thinking is incoherent. I'm sure you experienced that. It's like you can't think straight and you feel really scattered. And I hear that from clients all the time. I'm so scattered. Everything's all over the place. Like, right? So it's like your brain's like, the brain waves are all over the place. It's usually when you're in a high state of movement called high beta, and it's really crazy and incoherent, and it's this very stressful way for the mind to be. When the brain's like that, the heart's also like that, and so there's all these blah, 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 heart wave patterns. And because you're an electrical being and you're producing waves and patterns all the time, those patterns are also moving through your cells. And it's like really, really ugly music, right? You've heard music that's dissonant, where it's like they're screaming and yelling and the notes don't match and it's like painful to the ear and you might even go like this. So those are the type of waves you're producing throughout your body. You're producing ugly music throughout your body, and every cell is shaking to those vibrations, and it doesn't produce health. But if you get your brain and your heart relaxed and breathing, so to speak, in sync, so you start creating these beautiful patterns, and you can see that every single part of the brain is all going up and down and all pulsing at the exact same rate. Everything in the brain is working together in sync, together with the heart that's also pulsing in a beautiful way. And what's really cool about that is that on a stethoscope, that shows up these gorgeous geometric patterns, and they're absolutely beautiful. And so it's like you're creating really beautiful music throughout your body, and the communication throughout the body is smooth and beautiful and resonant, and that creates health. I'm sure you can imagine if you had to listen to like the worst punk rock, screaming, yelling, dissonant, horrible stuff all day long for weeks on end, you can imagine how that might make you ill. And if you listen to really beautiful music that inspired you for weeks on end, you can imagine how that might make you healthier. It's not difficult for us to imagine this stuff. It just stretches even further that within your own system, you can create waves and patterns that are beautiful and keep your entire body moving in rhythm and synchronicity. It's a crazy thing. Okay. So, okay, I want to look at my notes 1 second. Okay. So, as I mentioned before, this survival mode is it's a very material way of being, right? And then there's this thrive mode, which is the more spiritual is the wrong word, more energetic way of being, okay? And one of the things that he says over and over and over again, which has deeply affected both Dave and myself, is that when you're in this survival mode, you are matter trying to change matter. And the fact that there's 99% of you is actually empty space and just energy is totally irrelevant to you, because everything feels so hard and so like matter. That's all that you focus on, because you're only focused on what you can measure, what you can feel and touch and see and hear. And so there you are, matter trying to change matter. So let's say you've got a bum knee and it's really hurting you. You go to the doctor and the doctor says, we don't need to do surgery. And he puts you under, so you're totally out cold in anesthesia, and he cuts your knee and he gets to work, and you wake up a few hours later and you see your knee, it's a little bit swollen, it's got this incision and it's got stitches on it, and a few weeks later you get an x-ray, oh look, amazing, the knee is all healed. You start walking again and then jogging and then running, and you feel so good, oh my gosh, my knees never felt so amazing. And then you go back to your doctor for a checkup, and he tells you that you are actually part of a study. And it turns out, because there's actually studies like this that have been performed, that some of the patients were given actual surgery, and some of the patients just had an incision and were stitched right back up. And that was you. So how exactly did your knee heal? Your knee healed not from matter changing matter. The surgeon did nothing to your knee. He actually created more damage to your knee by creating an incision and putting anesthesia in your body and, painkillers and whatever else. That matter didn't change matter. You energetically, through belief and thought alone, told your body that your knee was going to heal, and so your knee healed itself. So Joe Dispenza asked this question: if thought alone can do this, How do we not depend on the placebo effect by going to a doctor to get a surgery or to get a drug? But how can we induce this within ourselves? How do we get ourselves into a sort of hypnotic trance state and then program whatever it is we want our bodies to do, whatever it is we want to create in our lives? And that's exactly what he teaches us how to do, which is kind of trippy in my personal opinion. Okay. Okay, so the big question that Joe Dispenza asks, right, is how do we do this thing? How do we go from matter trying to change matter to being more beings of energy, right? Beings that understand that in the quantum universe, absolutely everything is happening right now. There is no time, there is only now. All spaces and all dimensions are happening in this instant. So if I want to get from here to there, I don't need to be limited by the physical world where things are limited by the speed of light. I can do things instantly now if I really want to, which is how people can walk into a Joe Dispenza event. There's this one woman, I heard her story from herself, okay? She had tumors all up and down her spine that were this big, okay? Huge tumors. And she had a group of friends that she was with, the people in her group, so could see her tumor sticking out of her shirt, okay? And after one of the meditations, the tumor was gone, like that. That wasn't the speed of light. That was faster than the speed of light. She literally accessed a whole other state of being. She accessed a different dimension, a different self instantaneously, because that's something that's possible in the quantum universe. And in order for us to connect to that quantum space, we have to disconnect ourselves from the physical world. That means closing our eyes and not focusing on the sounds and the sights around us, and going into a state of consciousness where we're just focused internally and believing whatever it is we want to believe. And so I've just been choosing to believe some pretty cool, outrageous stuff. One is that my body's going to heal all that ails it. The other is I'm going to manifest some pretty amazing, miraculous things. And what's really cool is I've now chosen that the things that I want to manifest are quite specifically things that if I live in the world of matter, changing matter, I cannot make happen. I've chosen things that can only happen through what we tend to call miracles. And it's pretty exciting to see what I'm going to be able to manifest. Okay. So one of the things that came to me, not from Joe Dispenza speaking, and not while I was sitting in meditation, but actually in a conversation that I had with a new friend, Laura, that I made at the event. We were, was it Laura or was it Sarah? Okay, it might have been multiple people's conversations all meshed into one. That when we're born into this physical world, we are originally these totally spiritual beings, right? We're souls living in total and absolute oneness. Total oneness, total love, right? Every person who's ever had a near-death experience or who's actually died and come to life, whatever it is, all these people, they all tell you the exact same thing. They connected to total and absolute oneness, and it was total and absolute love, and they experienced everything and needed nothing. And then they have to shrink all of that greatness into this tiny little flesh and bone body over here, and it's painful. Because here in the material world, we experience that there's separateness, right? There's me over here, there's you over there. We experience ourselves as being separate, even though really we're all one. You and I, we're one, right? All of us are one, but it doesn't feel that way, right? I'm one with this mic, and I'm one with my dress, and I'm one with my body, and I'm one with the world, and I'm one, it's all one, but it doesn't feel that way. So I'm born into this world, and I feel like something is missing, and it's existentially painful. We feel like something's missing because something's wrong. I'm not feeling that oneness, that total and complete love. And I look around and I'm trying to figure out, well, where can I get it? Because my eyes are telling me that if there's something I need, I have to look for it here in the material world. And so I go looking for it. I try to get people who are going to fill that hole, and I try to get stuff to fill that hole, and maybe status or a job or career or degrees or ideologies that are going to fill that hole. And for most of us, it just doesn't cut it. It's never really enough. We still feel that hole. And for some people that manifests as disease, for other people as depression or anxiety or loneliness or angst or addiction. We all experience that hole. The problem is all of this stuff in the material world, it's the wrong shape for a God-sized hole. It's the wrong shape. We're looking in all the wrong places, because the only thing that's going to fill that hole is the awareness that it doesn't exist. That hole is an illusion, and it's an illusion created by my connections in the material world. So I can close my eyes and bring myself back in, and the love is already there. So I want to give you a little taste of that. Close your eyes, put your hand over your heart, and put your mind's eye in that space right under your hand. If you've ever done my Back to Your Business meditation with me, you've experienced this before, but I want to turn up the volume on that. Close your eyes and go into that place. Go into your heart and just breathe into your heart. And just breathe there, and you're going to notice thoughts are going to come in. Maybe there's a part of you that doesn't want to close your eyes. Close them anyway. Trust that you are safe. Unless you're driving, in which case, do this with your eyes open. And breathe into that place. And think of a time you felt giddy with laughter. Giddy with laughter. So much you couldn't stop. Maybe you fell over. Maybe you wet your pants. Whatever it is, think of that time. And breathe that memory into your heart. And think of a time you felt deeply connected to another human being. A sense of wholeness. And breathe that moment into your heart. And think of a time you felt total and utter awe. And breathe that moment into your heart. And think of a time you felt immensely grateful. And breathe that gratitude of that moment into your heart. You can open your eyes now, but hold that emotion, hold all of that emotion you just planted into your heart. You created that through thought alone. Outside circumstances didn't need to change in order for you to experience all of that emotion. And as you did that, just doing that exercise, you and me together, we created more coherence in our hearts. Your heart wave patterns became more beautiful. And that pattern pumped, right? You can feel your pulse here, you can feel your pulse here, you can feel your pulse at your feet. That beautiful wave got sent throughout your entire body. And it also went into your brain and created more coherence in your brain. You do that enough, you're just going to be a happier, healthier person. That's kind of a cool thing. Really easy to do and absolutely free. I've been spending so much money going to so many people trying to see if they could fix me on my very much. Okay. So now that I've told my little story, I want to share one other thing. When we are connected to that oneness and we feel whole and we don't feel like we have a hole, we feel that we are whole and we experience all of that oneness. So we are free to engage in creativity and play. You need safety in order to be creative and to play. So if you think about you're playing, you're jumping rope through the forest, and all of a sudden a bear appears. Under no circumstance you're going to be jumping rope. If anything, you're just going to ditch the rope, right? Because it's so not the time and place for play. You need safety for play. You need to know that you don't have to worry about survival in order to play. And if you watch kids, they're really, really good at play, right? They come to the conclusion that they're safe because of the adults that are around them, and so they engage in tons of play. But you put them in a war zone and they're going to stop playing unless you create some sort of circumstance that lets them feel safe again. And it's in that place of experiencing the oneness of everything that we can experience real safety, because the reality is 99% of your life, you are totally and absolutely safe. Other than the thoughts you have running through your head and the stress that you've created in your physiology, you're totally safe. And so in that safety, you can play. And from play, it's so fun to see, who can I become? Can I become an astronaut? Oh, wouldn't it be fun? Okay, well, in order to become an astronaut, I might need to train, I might need to work, I might need to move forward, I might need to do things. But wouldn't it be fun to be an astronaut? Wouldn't it be fun to have a house? Wouldn't it be fun to have a car? Wouldn't it be fun to do all these things? And we do them not out of a need to be enough, but just because it's so much fun. So much fun to play. Okay, so I was telling you about this idea of creating heart and brain coherence. And as he was talking about it, I came up with a visualization that really deeply resonated with me, and I shared it with a few other people that I met at the retreat, and it deeply resonated with them as well. So I'm going to share it with you because it's a simple meditation technique that you can use right now and take with you. So I'm going to explain it, and then we're going to do it together, okay? So the first thing is you'll notice that hugging your heart, you have your two lungs, right? And as you breathe in, the lungs expand, and as you breathe out, the lungs contract. So you have this motion. And notice that if you're breathing in a consistent way, you create this beautiful pattern, right? It's a wave pattern. And if this pattern were to actually be energetic, which it is, so it's going to keep sending waves, pulsating waves beyond your body like that, okay? So it's waves going out, waves coming in, waves going out, waves coming in, okay? So it turns out your brain has a very similar design to it, right? You have your right and left lobes, and when you breathe in, they expand like that. When you breathe out, they contract. They expand and contract. And what are they hugging? They're hugging two very important glands in the center of your brain. One is the pineal gland, and the other is the pituitary gland. So this entire retreat was all focused on activating the pineal gland, because the pineal gland is what creates serotonin and melatonin and the chemicals that are based on melatonin that make your body go into hibernation. Right, animals that hibernate use an offshoot of melatonin, and when you go into deep meditation, your body can go into hibernation while you still stay conscious. That can make an animal bioluminescent, which is why we see spiritual people. We say that they radiate a lot of light, kind of crazy, but pretty cool. And your brain can also create psychedelic substances out of melatonin, also in the pineal gland. And I gotta tell you, I experienced that myself. Kind of cool stuff, right? And when the pineal gland is activated and producing these really awesome hormones, that pushes the pituitary gland, which is like the mama gland of the entire body, to send signals to the entire body to start creating more health, to repair, to rejuvenate the body. So when melatonin is activated, then the body goes into rest and repair and health. When a person's under a lot of stress, melatonin is suppressed. They don't sleep as well, and their body actually doesn't repair well either. So there's all sorts of repair and healing and ecstatic states that happen right in the center of the brain, okay? So you have your heart and you have these glands in the center of the brain. Hopefully you can picture that. Now hugging both of those, you have the lungs, and you have the left and right lobes. So if you can just picture with your eyes closed, right now do it with your eyes open so you can see me, but what we're going to do is you're going to picture with your eyes closed this happening. My elbows are hugging my heart so that you can see that this is expanding, and my hands are hugging my brain, and it's this type of expansion, and you want them to go out and in unison. And as that happens, as it's happening in unison, they're creating beautiful waves, and those waves are moving throughout your body, but not just throughout your body. I'm sure if you walked into a room and said something like, ooh, the energy in the room is really intense, or wow, the energy in the room is so comforting, right? You can tell the energy in the room. You can tell the energy of a person because we actually put out energy from our bodies, right? You've heard of the concept of an aura. It's something that can actually be scientifically measured. We put out different amounts of energy coming off of our bodies and in different flavors of energy, and we send out signals. Your brain and your heart function like a radio tower, sending out signals out into the universe, everything from how you're feeling to what you want. So you're sending out a signal into your body to create health, and out of your body to create sort of health of environment, right? In attracting positive experiences and positive people to you. Now, if you do this whilst picturing something you really want to experience in your life. So for me, that's running a marathon. I injured my ankle years ago and was told by a physician that it would never be healed. And I've decided to not believe that physician, that my body can heal itself, just like so many hundreds of people have had healings of their bodies. And so I'm picturing myself running the Jerusalem Marathon. And I'm picturing all of those other runners with me. I'm picturing myself going through the finish line. I'm picturing Dave grabbing me and hugging me and spinning around in circles. And at the same time as I'm picturing that with my brain, right, and sending out that signal with my brain, I'm also experiencing the emotion of that experience as though it were happening right now. Not in a hopeful, wistful, wondering, oh, somewhere out in the future. I'm experiencing that emotion as though it's happening right now. So if I have my eyes closed, my body can't tell the difference between a story that I'm telling it and actual reality. If it's experiencing the emotion, it believes it's happening right now. So if it's happening right now, my body's like, oh, I gotta get Hannah in tune for running because, well, she's running. It's already happening. So as I'm picturing myself running through that finish line, I'm feeling the joy, I'm feeling the ecstasy, I'm feeling the accomplishment, I'm feeling the freedom. I strongly associate running with freedom, feeling the freedom of the run, the wonder of what it is to be a walking miracle, a running miracle in this case. Such an amazing thing, and I'm experiencing all of those emotions. And so I'm feeling those emotions, I'm picturing that thing, which is really easy to do because while I'm in it, it feels so real and I can experience those emotions with my eyes closed, and this wave is happening, and all of that's happening at the same time. So I want you to try it because then you can practice it at home. Well, you might already be at home, but whatever. You can practice on your own time beyond this conversation. So close your eyes and picture something you really want to experience in your life. It could be health, it could be a career change, it could be meeting somebody special, it could be getting married, whatever it is. Having a child. So I'm picturing myself running the Jerusalem Marathon, and I'm feeling the emotions. So I want you to identify what emotions would you experience if that were happening right now, if that thing that you want isn't out in the future, if it's happening right now. So for me, that's freedom and joy and exhilaration and ecstasy and excitement and enthusiasm. And as I'm feeling those emotions and I'm picturing myself doing that run, I'm also breathing into my heart and watching my lungs expand and my left and right hemispheres of my brain expand at the same time. In and out. In and out. In and out. And the really cool thing that Joe Dispenza does, keep going in and out as I talk to you, is that he's not just talking us through these meditations. He's also selected music that activates the mind into a more trance state. My guess is you've experienced that music affects you emotionally and energetically, and there's certain kinds of music that hit your brain in different ways, and certain kinds of music slow down your brain more, and the slower your brain waves are, the more suggestible you are. So you want to get your brain, you can open your eyes now you've had a taste of it, you can get your brain into a suggestible state so that the brain waves are moving so slowly and you're so calm and peaceful, just like you are when you're asleep, that you can program whatever you want. So these are things I've programmed into myself, and I keep programming them over and over and over again through visualization while I'm in a trance state that I got myself into, either through reading or through guidance or through music. I personally happen to find his guided meditations to be absolutely phenomenal. I love the music that he chooses. Some people don't resonate with his voice. You can find a different guide if you prefer, but I happen to really like his meditations personally. If you buy his course, his online intensive and progressive course, it costs $300. I personally think it's worth every penny. It took me a long time to buy it because I'm like, oh, $300. Now I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so insane. That thing looks like amazing. He has a whole bunch of guided meditations that are part of that course, and I happen to find them to be really, really solid. Okay, so that's one thing that I got out of my experience, is how to do that kind of breathing. And now to the really cool, trippy stuff. So my first day at the retreat was actually the retreat, well, this registration was like at 4, and the event only started like at 5 something and p.m. in the evening. And so we just did one meditation, and that meditation was horrible. It was absolutely horrific. So I'm sitting there, and I'm going to give you a taste of my mental chatter. Oh my gosh, this is just, no, I can't do this. This is just too hard. And I'm thinking like, and I start thinking about, yesterday in the hotel room, and I'm hungry, and what I'm going to have for dinner. Stop thinking about what you're having for dinner. What are you doing thinking about what you're having for dinner? Do you know how much money you spend on this retreat? Sit down and just focus. Okay. I'm trying to focus, but oh my gosh, but like, I'm not sitting comfortably, and I don't know how to get more comfortable, and my back is starting to hurt, and stop focusing on your back. Just stay at this retreat. Okay, that kind of chatter was going on, and I was arguing with myself the entire time. And the more I argued with myself, the guiltier I felt, and the worse I felt, and the worse I felt, the more chatter there was, and it just kept being like a whole train. And I couldn't wait for the meditation to be over because it was total and absolute hell. And I come out of it, and the first thought that comes to me is, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to do this for an entire week. My entire week is going to be like this. And I realized that story could absolutely shape my week. So I sat myself down. I went to a quiet place, and I sat myself down, and I talked to myself. And I said, Hannah, it's okay. You had a challenging meditation, but it does not define you. It does not define this week. It's okay. You're going to have lots of opportunities to sit, and things can be different. And I sort of believed that, but then I was in the line at the bathroom. So as usually happens at these events, there's a lot more women than men. It was like twice as many women than men, but just as many bathroom stalls for women than men, and women take a lot longer to go to the bathroom. So the line in the women's bathroom is always at least like 10 women long. So it ends up being the best place to make friends because you're just standing there. And I spoke to this woman who was standing behind me, who I just thought was just a regular lady. It turns out she's actually one of the staff people, and not just a staff person. She was the staff person for my group, but I hadn't met her yet. And I told her about my experience, and she said, oh, just listen, the first 2 days are really hard, and it gets better from there. Just be compassionate and be patient. It's going to be okay. And I said, but I've never had a meditation this horrible in my entire life. And she said, all of the ugliest, scariest stuff is all going to come up at the beginning because your body's going to fight you because it's really not interested in letting go of its material existence. So I was like, okay, fine, I can do this. So I'm not exactly sure whether it was the second or the third meditation, but things started to shift for me at a certain point. And we closed our eyes and we went into meditation, and most of his meditations were about an hour and a half long, about that long, which for me was really long. But when I was in it, it didn't feel long. I was totally fine. I could have done much, much longer. So I'm sitting there, it's an hour and a half meditation, and at a certain point, he asks everyone, there's 1,500 people in the room, all meditating together. He says, invite the energy of healing. Bring in the energy of healing or something like that, right? And this isn't like a woo-woo term. It's just like, you know what healing has a certain sort of energy. Like even just using the word healing or talking about healing feels a certain way in you and a certain way in your body. That's it. That's all he's saying. Bring in healing. And as soon as he said that, I know this is like really vulnerable for me to share, but one of the things that came up for me that was a massive fear that I clearly have to get over in order to really heal is not being scared of being weird or crazy. And I've had a lot of supernatural experiences in my life, and I was always really, really scared of them. And when I was a little girl, I was absolutely petrified of them and kept shoving them under the rug and hiding them and suppressing them. And I think that's a lot of why I actually get headaches. So in an attempt to heal, please hold space for me sharing this really vulnerable thing to I don't know how many people in the world. I saw beings enter the room, a lot of them, and they were all along the outside of the room. And when I say I saw, my eyes were closed and I had eye patch over my eyes and the room was dark. So I wasn't seeing with my eyes, I was sensing with whatever it is in us that can sense things, right? You can sense when somebody walks into the room, that same kind of sense. If you want to know what they look like, I can't help you. I could just sense them. They didn't really look like anything. They were just kind of these like blobs. But I could sense them come into the room, and I was like, okay, that's interesting. And the first thing that came into my head was, I'm probably making this up because I have a tendency not to trust myself very much. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm probably making this up, but I'm going to go with it anyway. And okay. And then he had us, at the end of every meditation, he had us lie down, because he says when you're lying down, your autonomic nervous system can process all of the work that you've been doing and integrate it into your body. And I found lying down to be very helpful. And I noticed what he said to be true. I experienced it to be true. And when we were lying down in this meditation, I saw 4 of these beings come up close to my body and have their hands over my body. And they were doing some sort of healing, weird woo-woo situation. I don't really understand. And the other thing that happened was that I met my older self. So she's about in her 70s and really super tan and very spunky and high energy, sort of like the best of myself, but older and way wiser. And I met her, and she was, I was experiencing some challenging stuff, and she was like really there. She was really holding space, and it was really fun to meet her, and we really bonded. And she's stayed with me ever since. Like whenever I want her to appear, she just does. So I can just kind of, it's almost like on your television where you can, have 150 channels. So there's a channel for her, and I can just sort of click that channel in my mind, and then she's there. She's always there. It's just a matter of whether I notice that she's there or not. So that's kind of cool. I hope that doesn't sound crazy that I just said it's really vulnerable, but I shared it anyway. Okay. And then I'm still thinking I'm crazy. I'm imagining this stuff. It's not real. But I was just sitting with that discomfort of how crazy and not real it is, and maybe there's something wrong with me. And I felt like it would have been really nice to have somebody holding space for me. So my bathroom angel, I found out in the bathroom that she was actually on staff, right? So I found her, and I went up to her, and I told her what happened. And she said, oh, that's really interesting, because another person on staff also said she saw beings come into the room. And she said, and they were all along the edges of the room. And I was like, yeah. And she said, yeah, they come often. And that was pretty trippy, because there were a couple other times where I experienced beings in the room, and that was pretty amazing. So my favorite meditations, I think for most people, the most beautiful meditations we did were walking meditations. So he had us, the majority of the meditations we did, we were sitting in a chair. I preferred sitting on the floor, like cross-legged in lotus position. That's more comfortable for me. So some people sat on the floor, most people sat in chairs. And then at the end of the meditation, he has you lie down to integrate. There was one meditation that we did lying down the entire time. And he basically wants you to be comfortable and real, being in different states of consciousness, no matter what physical position you're in and what stage of life you're in. And so lying down is one way to be in a different state of consciousness. And can you keep your body alert even while you're lying down? Sitting up is another one. And then standing is a third. But the fourth is to be walking, to be in the world. Can you hold your consciousness in an elevated state and be totally internally in whatever emotional state you're in, even as you're moving through the world? And that's where walking meditation is really amazing. We did most of our walking meditations during sunrise on the beach. So there's 1,500 people on the beach, all facing the ocean, which is where the sun was coming up. And we're doing any sort of bowing to the sun or anything. It's just pretty and nice and not crazy hot because it's Cancun, so it's really, really hot. So we got there just before sunrise when the air is still really cool, and just the sunrise is a beautiful time to greet the day. So we're standing there, and he has you close your eyes, and you have a headset on, and you're listening to a recording of this walking meditation. And so everybody's listening to it at their own, whenever you start, you just start. But most people are about at the same place. And he has you close your eyes and go inside and do a lot of the work he does inside of the room, of like focusing on different parts of your body and really getting yourself centered and focused. And then he has you open your eyes and walk, still holding that consciousness. And now walking, there's birds, there's noise, there's people, everybody's doing funny things or making faces or smiling or whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. Like normally that stuff is like crazy distracting. So it's like, can you hold your state even with all of that distraction and bring yourself back to center? And so it was beautiful. And it was also beautiful to see people's faces start to light up and smile and be in a beautiful state while simultaneously working on holding my own. It was like that balance of keep going inside while still experiencing the external world was a lot of work and also really beautiful. So that was part of our experience. As the retreat progressed, I noticed I became more and more capable of finding the different energy centers in my body and experiencing where they were and staying focused on them and staying focused in meditation and sitting through it and experiencing, to be honest, higher and higher states of consciousness. So at a certain point, we did a meditation he calls the kaleidoscope, where he actually has on these huge screens what looks like a kaleidoscope. So you can just Google kaleidoscope and you'll see a YouTube of what looks like a kaleidoscope, images that just keep changing in these beautiful, fractal, gorgeous, geometric patterns. And those patterns get your brain into a trance state. So he's got music getting you into a trance state, he's got the images getting you into a trance state, and he's talking you into breathing and focusing. And in that meditation, my pineal gland clearly created some psychedelic substances because I went to a very, very high place. And I spent that hour and a half laughing. But not a little bit of laughter. We're talking full on, full body, insane amounts of laughter. And we were visualizing something we want to experience in our lives. And that visualization for me was so real. I was like swimming in it. And I went to such a high place, I couldn't really follow him anymore. So he kept giving instruction and I was somewhere else. But once in a while, I'd hear his instruction. And everything he said was like really, really funny. Kind of like how people go into giggles when they're smoking pot, which I've never done, but I have seen other people do. So I was just in that, just everything was like really, really funny. And the only challenge of it was that my stomach was aching so bad because my muscles were getting really tired from all that laughter. I've since then laughed so much that my stomach muscles have actually gotten a lot stronger so they don't hurt anymore, which is so cool. And I also noticed that I started bringing in abilities to do things that I couldn't do before, which I'm not ready to talk about, but there were some like pretty cool supernatural abilities that I now have access to that I didn't before. So that's kind of cool. But also just in the midst of all of that laughter was just an understanding of everything is one. These things don't matter that much. Everything is good. I'm safe. Life is good. Everything is amazing. I was just in such joy and such laughter, and it was amazing. And then something really, really special happened, which is that out of the 1,500 people, anyone who wants to can sign up to be healed during what are called coherence healing sessions. So everyone at the program gets trained to bring healing to other people, and 170 participants were chosen to be healed. And I was blessed with being chosen to be healed, which is pretty amazing. And I'm going to get emotional because it was really special. So there were 3 healing sessions during the retreat on 3 different days of the event. And the Heelys laid down on the floor, and then they had 8 chairs around them. And in those chairs sat healers, okay? And everyone was really focused on expanding their heart and getting their heart really, really big and bringing love and bringing healing energy. And I myself was bringing love and healing energy to the other people in my group, to all of the Heelys in the room. All of the Heelys, we kind of bonded because we had this like shared experience. And in that, some people had spontaneous healings. Some people all of a sudden just started screaming. I went into massive fits of laughter, like huge, and crying. And I did some really beautiful healing work, emotional healing work. And also, I think I started some physical healing work. My headaches are already doing better, which is pretty cool. But one of the things that happened was that the love was just so big that in every stage of the healing experience, I didn't know if I could take anymore. So like the first thing he does is the people come into the room, and then he has them sit down, and then he has them go like this and rub their hands together, and he has them feel the energy between their hands, and then he has them turn their hands out, okay? Each one of these steps takes like 5 minutes, right? And when each step came in, I was like, oh no, more, I don't know if I could take anymore, because all of that love was coming in, and I was experiencing it as like laughter, sometimes as crying, but mostly as laughter. And I was like, I didn't know if I could hold more energy than that. And the last group I was in, there was this one woman, so cute. She said that the energy was, for her, she felt it was so big over my body that she couldn't keep her hands down. They had to go up to here. She couldn't keep them down. It was like literally pushing her up all the way here. And then at a certain point, I opened my eyes and I could see the 8 people around me who, until then, I had my eyes closed. I couldn't see them. And I couldn't stop laughing. Like the meditation's over, people are saying hello and greeting each other, and I can't stop laughing. So I'm still like laughing and laughing and laughing. So I said to the people in my group, well, you guys might as well just come and laugh with me. So they all got off their chairs and sat down, and we all held hands in a circle, and we're all cracking up, right? Them not as much as me, but my laughter's pretty contagious laughter. So they were like laughing with me and then crying. And then what was so particularly beautiful was that each one of them wanted to give me a hug and say thank you. They wanted to thank me. Of course, I wanted to thank them, but like, how on earth did they want to thank me? And I think that like, that's what it is to plug into that total and absolute love and oneness. But when someone gives you an opportunity to love so much, what happens to you? You get full of love. And when you're that full of love, you don't need anything else. It's like when I'm running in my mind's eye and I'm feeling the exhilaration, it's like I don't really need to actually win the race, or not win the race. I don't need to actually run the race to feel the exhilaration. It's already here. The love is already here. The joy is already here. All that emotion that we're like chasing after, that we're trying to like get from the outside world to fill in that hole, it's here. It's already here. The hole is an illusion. And why did they feel so much? Because they were invited to love another person. They created that. And I was just the avenue that they chose to create that within themselves. But they wanted to thank me, but really they should have been thanking themselves, right? But it's also nice that they thanked me. It was like a bonding experience. It was beautiful. What I've experienced pretty much in every meditation, at a certain point, it just became my thing, that all I could do was just laugh and just laugh and laugh and laugh. Not at every meditation, but most of the time. And I went up to one of the leaders of my group, and I said to her, I was like, I've got a first world problem. She's like, yes, tell me. I said, well, I'm laughing so much that my stomach is really sore, and I don't know what to do. And she said, you're always in control of your body. If you don't want to laugh, just stop laughing. And I said, but then I don't get to feel the emotion. She's like, that's the price you pay. I'm like, oh, that sucks, right? So then the next meditation, again, I laughed for an hour and a half, and I went up to her and I was like, I decided to suck it up. She's like, good on you, right? Because it just felt so good to have all of that joy running through my body. I could literally feel every single cell in my body vibrating with so much joy. There's a man named Norman Cousins, you can look him up, who was who got sick. I can't remember what the disease was, something really weird. And doctors, like, it was terminal. The doctors told him he had only so much time to live. He locked himself, I believe, in a hotel room and only allowed really positive people to come and visit him. And he played comedies constantly on the TV, just constant comedies. And he laughed himself back to health, had total and absolute remission just through laughter alone. Now, the really cool thing about laughter is that it creates gamma brain waves in the brain. And gamma brain waves in the brain can induce laughter. So it's kind of like a back and forth. Now, when laughter creates gamma brain waves in the brain, gamma brain waves are hyper fast brain waves. They're what are created during psychedelic experiences. When people take psychedelics, part of why they're seeing all of these beautiful fractals and having super tripped out experiences and having expansive consciousness experiences is because their brains are functioning really fast. And there's thousands of brain connections that are happening in every moment, as opposed to dozens of brain connections. Thousands are happening. And so learning is so much faster, processing is so much faster, healing is so much faster in gamma. So just through laughter alone, you create a tremendous amount of healing in the body. And the really cool thing about this event was I was like, okay, well, I'm getting all of this high energy because I'm around all of these people, but what if I can't take it home with me? Well, the next day, after we came out of the event, I did one of these meditations and laughed for an hour and a half. And the day after that, also, it hasn't been every day, and it's not the entire meditation, and it's not all the time, but it doesn't take much for me to induce a state of laughter in my body that gets sustained for a really long time. And that's just amazing, and it feels so good. I'm able to just access so much joy that way, and so much movement. It's like the whole body, especially when I'm lying down and laughing, it's like the whole body's going like this and this and this and this. Super cool. So what else did I get out of this experience? I think the biggest thing I got is that something I've been saying out loud for a really long time and saying to my clients for a really long time, but that I experienced in a much deeper way than I ever actually believed. And that is that everything we need, absolutely everything we need and want, is already in us. We think we have to go outside of ourselves to get it, but if we just sit with ourselves long enough, we'll find it. We'll find the joy, we'll find the peace, we'll find the wisdom, find all of that stuff. The other thing I got out of the event is that plugging into massive groups, all working really hard to get into higher states of consciousness, really makes a difference. That I need to find community and do this in community as much as I can. So one thing I'm thinking about that I spoke with another Israeli at the event is renting a house in Israel and just inviting a bunch of people and playing the meditations and just meditating throughout the day, and then working together, discussing and talking about what our experiences were like and supporting each other. And just doing that once in a while is really inexpensive and totally doable, and bonding. And we can plug into each other and really help each other rise. So, and the third thing I got is that guided meditation for me is super duper helpful. I've experienced some beautiful experiences, some connected experiences doing silent meditation, but I've found that these guided meditations that Joe has put together they're just really phenomenal. They really help me connect. They help me to focus. They put me significantly more in touch with my body, because he has you really pay attention to all of the parts of your body and like give them love, give them attention, give them presence. And that's really spoken to me. So I want to open up myself up for questions. And on the platform I'm on, I'm not exactly sure how to do that. So I'm going to try to Hold on, I'm going to try to, I've just used this software for the first time. So I'm just going to try to access it on YouTube to see if anybody put any questions because I'm not seeing them here. So just give me a second. Okay, so I'm not seeing anything. So I'm going to leave it. Unless anybody has any questions, you can type them into the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to say thank you very much for being here. If you do have any questions in the future, you're totally welcome to send them my way. Oh, okay. So Ariel asked, Jose Silva's mind control method, have you heard about it? No, I have not heard about it, but now I'm very curious to look. I'm super curious to check it out, but I don't know what it is. So I'm just going to leave it at that. If there aren't any other questions, please know that you can always email me. I don't check my YouTube comments so much, so I wouldn't recommend that you put questions in the YouTube comments. It's better that if you email me directly, and I'm happy to add them to the YouTube, or to just let me know, hey, I put a question in the YouTube comment, please go check over there, and I'm happy to answer it there. But thank you so much for being here, and I hope you got a little taste of my experience and feel inspired to read Dr. Joe's books, to sit with yourself in meditation, and to access something a little bit higher. Take care.